Hi guys, so we're here today, myself and Natalie, and we're in Palmerstown, and the case that we're going to be working on today, it's a very, very harrowing case, and we always end our videos with happy Friday the 13th, and someday it will be Friday the 13th. Well, this is the day, and it is Friday the 13th. And I can't think of a better case that we could cover than this one for Friday the 13th, because this case involves the Opus Dei organization, Satanism, and of course a satanic murder, burglary, and an immense cover-up, because this never got the coverage that it should have done. In fact, I was discussing this case with Natalie maybe a week ago or so, and Natalie had never heard about it. Had you, Natalie?
No, never.
So it just goes to show how things can get lost in the cracks through the passage of time. And it also makes me wonder about, much older cases, like, to do with the Hellfire Club and stuff like that, where you would say, well, surely somebody knew something about blah blah blah, or there was a connection. But if something can get almost lost in time from 1973 to 2024, surely it can get lost along the, if a modern case can get lost like that, surely a much older case can be lost. So anyhow, what we're going to do is we're going to take you to a place, we're going to park up, and we're going to have a chat about this case, and we're going to go through everything that we know about the case. And it's a very difficult case to actually procure information about, but if you're coming with us, get into the back of the car, okay, and buckle up. Make sure you put your safety belt on, because we're definitely in for a rough ride with this one. So we're going to come back to you in a few minutes, guys. Okay guys, so we're back in my natural habitat. So we're going to continue this story, which is, and it's a surprisingly cold day actually for early September. It's cold, Natalie, isn't it?
Freezing. My hands are going to drop off.
But this story will warm you up, because it's shocking. It really is. So we're dealing with a poor little boy, John Horgan, 7 years of age, and he was murdered for the benefit of a black mass. And I know it sounds incredible that nobody really knows about this story. 1973, the 14th of June 1973, a Thursday afternoon, he was murdered. He was murdered by a Lorcan Bale, his next door neighbour, believe it or not. And at the very beginning of the video you can see the two houses. They were adjoined, and on the day in question, Lorcan was doing his intercert, and he sat the geography test. He came home and made himself a cup of coffee, went up to his bedroom, and we've more to tell you about his bedroom in a little while. But anyhow, his mother was gone to hospital, wasn't she, Natalie?
Yeah, I think she had just gone in to have a hysterectomy done.
Okay, so what was her name? Was it Catherine, I think?
Yeah, it was Catherine.
Catherine Bale, nee Breslin. And of course, the Breslin grandparents lived with the Bales as well. Lorcan, I think, had 4 other siblings. I think he was the eldest of 5, and his brother shared the bedroom with him. So, lo and behold, young John was dropped into the next door neighbours to look after him for the afternoon, and I suppose grandmother Breslin would have been in the primary role of that. And he was out in the garden. They had a canary, and he was fascinated by this little canary. So Lorcan came down to him and he said, do you want to go into the back field and we go looking for rabbits? So lo and behold, he brought him looking for rabbits, or at least as the poor little kid thought he was going to look for rabbits. And he came across what he believed to be a burrow, and he told him to stick his head down the burrow, and of course the little kid did. And with that, he clubbed him on the back of the head. Now, if there's anything positive in this story, the only positive thing that I can gather out of it is the doctors believed that he died instantly and never even knew he was going to be hit. So that's the only positive in it, isn't it? Would you agree, Natalie?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So he started figuring out now how to bring him home. And what he did is he went back and got a rucksack. And he made some of his journey. He couldn't entirely fit the child into the rucksack. He made some of his journey, and he was noted by a couple of people. So he actually hid him and covered him in nettles and came back and got him again the second time. And somebody said, "Where are you going with that big bag?" And he said, "Well, I'm collecting firewood. We're going to have a barbecue." So then he came into the house and up into his bedroom, and lo and behold, within his bedroom, at the back of his wardrobe, he had made a trapdoor, and that trapdoor then led up to another trapdoor that he had made that gave him access to the attic. Like, I know it's hard to believe this, but this is a genuine true story, and sometimes the truth is actually stranger than any fiction. So he hoisted him up into the attic, and he then went down and pretty much had his dinner. Like, there was no problem for him to do this. So I'm going to skip to and fro and back in time, but stick with me and it'll all. So we're going back to time to when he went to school, and he was in an all-Irish school. Lorcan Bale's father was a very, very staunch Gael goer, and of course they were members of the Opus Dei, which is a very strict, staunch Catholic practice, So the father was everything about Gael gore. He had been a teacher himself, but shyness, I think, caused great difficulty for him in being a teacher. So he went to work as a civil servant. He was a very high up civil servant, and he worked in the Ordnance Survey Ireland office. So Lorcan, he was quite sick as a kid and suffered from very, very bad asthma. And it was maybe during some of his terms in hospital that he came across a periodical magazine. Now, the name of the magazine escapes you now. Can you remember what it's called, Natalie?
Was it Man, Myth and Legend? Man,
Myth and Magic, I think. That's
Magic,
what it was.
Oh yeah, Magic.
And it was a periodical. And of course, this was all everything esoteric. And, we have to remember, we're talking about the early 70s. There was no Facebook, there was no Google, so you had to go and either buy books, rent them from the library, or just find people that had similar interests. So that's where his interest started in this, and indeed I know he had an interest in Anton LaVey as well, the guy who created the Church of Satan. But before we move forward about Anton LaVey, and we must remember that Anton LaVey was totally against violence and stuff like that, and everything that he believed in his church was to be done in a consensual fashion. So Anton LaVey, I suppose for want of a better word, was really an atheist, I suppose, practicing atheism really. He wasn't into sacrifices or anything like that, and he didn't even believe that the parchments used within the Church of Satan could be used from goats or whatever. But that wasn't the case for Lorcan, because Lorcan in school didn't have a lot of friends, but he became friends with a guy that he was sat beside with the same Christian name, another Lorcan, a Lorcan Conroy, and they became pretty good friends. They had the same interest in music, Slade. They're into Slade, and obviously they would have listened to a bit of Black Sabbath and any kind of rock music that was there at the time. Maybe Alice Cooper, I suppose, in such early 70s. It definitely would have predated the new wave of British heavy metal, so there'd have been no Iron Maiden or Saxon or anything like that at that point in time. But that was the music they were into. Now, Lorcan, he because of the asthma, he wasn't good at exercise and he wasn't good at sport or anything like that. That said, it has been documented that any time that he got into a fist fight, he very, very seldom lost. So he had some driving and inertia to win and to be quite good at violence. And it was around this same time that a lot of things happened with him all at the one time, these different forms of catalyst. He became interested in trapping rats, and he used to put them in a lime pit at the back in that field where he actually murdered Lorcan, and that this would strip all the matter off them. And he eventually started making necklaces out of rat skulls and stuff like that. He started killing neighbourhood cats as well, and of course it was documented that he killed a dog. In addition to that, he was killing rabbits, and there was a couple of guys that he used to go fishing with. Was it the Brown brothers, Natalie, is that right?
Yeah.
And they said no matter what little fish he caught, big or small, it had to be bludgeoned to death, you know. So we could see that there was a lot of stuff unraveling here all at the one time. In around the same time too, he used to go and get rabbits off two brothers, the Dunn brothers. And in actual fact, one occasion he went to their house, and they had quite a number of crucifixes in the house, and he inverted every one of them, and he put footprints with some sort of luminous paint up the walls and onto the ceiling, and then drew a pentagram as well. Now, to the extent that they ultimately had to call in the church, didn't they? Yeah. And what was the story there? There was some bad omens or whatever, but they felt that they needed a mass said in the home.
Yeah, the parents got the priest to come over to say a mass just to bless the house, really.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, this was what was going on, right? And what can we blame at this point in time? So lo and behold, he said to his friend Lorcan Conroy that he was going to start robbing stuff, and the first thing he did rob was quite a nice racing bike, and himself and Lorcan, they kind of did that together, and they split the money, bought cigarettes and chips and whatnot, and you know, that I suppose doesn't sound all that bad, really, you know. I have to say. But he progressed from there. The church was broken into, and the tabernacle was broken into. 3 Eucharists were taken, and the silver chalice was taken as well. At that same point in time, yet again, the crucifix at the centre of the altar was inverted. So we can definitely see now things are kind of expanding, aren't they?
And he's gathering all of his bits and bobs, and I think he made a bag with like the club and stuff in it.
Yeah. So there's certainly premeditation here, isn't there? Like, I mean, when we unpack all of this, we can realise that it didn't just randomly happen on the 14th of June. There was preps being done here. Like, bear in mind, there's a trapdoor made in the attic, and a trapdoor in his wardrobe. And how he was able to do all this, unbeknownst to his brother that was sharing the room with him, is beyond me. And he brought Lorcan over one day, and he showed him the trapdoor, and he brought him up into the attic, and they performed a seance with a Ouija board. Now, don't you know, a Ouija board would have to come into this somewhere, but they performed a seance with a Ouija board, and apparently that Lorcan Bale went into some sort of transcendental state, and then came out of it. And then he hastened to show a peephole that he had carved into from the attic into the ceiling of the bathroom below, and so they could peep on his younger sister having a bath. So, like, there's lots of weird stuff going on here already, and like, I mean, we haven't even got to the weirdest stuff. So he decided to break into the office at the school in the middle of the night, and he got a large sum of money out of that. And the two boys off they went and bought Slade tickets and went to see Slade play in Dublin. So I suppose we move forward now to the point of what happened actually on the 14th of June. And close to that point, he had told Lorcan Conroy, his friend, that he had joined a satanic cult, and that satanic cult was run by a high priest and priestess, and of course they met weekly, and there was acts of depravity, whatever goes hand in hand with a satanic cult. And
he did go missing, didn't he, back in December?
Very good point, Natalie, because I was actually forgetting about that. There's so much information going through my head about this, and you know, when we make the videos, we don't really make a lot of notes. I like to go off the cuff. you're quite right, and that was around the winter solstice as well. He went missing for 4 days, and he told his parents he was in County Meath. Now, County Meath, you know, straight away you have to think about Newgrange, the Hill of Tara, and all these pre-Christian sites, okay, that would have pagan relevance, wouldn't they? So he wasn't really questioned on that, I don't think, by his parents either, but he was missing for 4 days around the winter solstice. So that was the winter solstice of 1972. He did tell his friend Lorcan Conroy that he was going to kill a boy, and he gave the name, and the name, of course, was John Horgan, his next door neighbour. Now, the guards started putting pressure on him. The investigating detectives asking him, because he was known to be the last person to see the poor child, and one of the detectives noticed that when he was pressing stuff like this, he got very fidgety with his hands and stuff like that, and he pressed him so hard, and he said, look, we're going to search your house, he said, and we're going to search it from tip to toe, and he said, if there's anything in that house, we'll find it. And he came clean, and he said, okay, I murdered him, and he's in the attic. They went up into the attic, and I'm pretty sure that these detectives weren't expecting anything that they had seen, and they had never seen anything like this before, and most likely never seen anything for the rest of their career, because to my knowledge, this is the only satanic murder that's documented in Irish history. Now, am I saying it's the only one that ever happened? No, I'm not, but it's the only one in modern time that has been documented. They went up into the attic, and the poor little kid, 7 years of age, was in a cruciform position, hanging from the rafters, and it was a sacrificial altar. There was a number of items that he had there. One of the items was the little boy's bike, a rally chipper. Now, I never even heard of these, but apparently they were just a smaller version of a rally chopper. I'm going to guess in our day the equivalent would have been a rally striker, which was the baby version of a rally grifter. So that was there, and that was John Horgan's little bike, the rally chipper. There was a saucepan of human excrement. There was a tray of sand with 5 candles in it, of course, in the pentagram shape. A clock that was stopped at 5 o'clock, and I don't know why. I can only presume that maybe 5 o'clock was the time that the child was murdered. I can't think of anything. Can you, Natalie?
No.
What else was there? Well, there was
charcoal.
Yeah, and there was robes, sacrificial robes.
Yeah. Rose petals.
Rose petals in a jar, wasn't there? Yeah, and I don't think I'm missing anything. No, but it was certainly
black and white powder.
Black and white powder. That's correct. Yeah, and that was it. But like, I mean, what a shock. So, you know what? In a way, it goes on and it continues to go on and on, because he was taken and he came clean, and he was brought to this St. Patrick's Institute, which is I suppose a kind of a borstal for underage boys. It's a prison for underage boys. It's closed down now, and he stayed there. So he was 16 when it happened. He stayed there until he was I think nearly 20, and then he went to Arbor Hill. Now, we all know Arbor Hill is that prison that caters for our wildest and weirdest people in this country. You know, it's where Larry Murphy was. It's where, you know, any of the really bizarre offenders end up for some reason in Arbor Hill. But he got out when he was I think in his early 20s, 23 years of age. I think he was out. Now, the funny thing is, while he was in St. Patrick's, he was able to come home for Sunday dinner every second Sunday, and I don't know how bizarre this is. I still can't get my head around this one, but they allowed him to paint pentagrams on the floor and on the ceiling while he was in St. Patrick's in his room. So he got out anyhow, and where is he now? He's in the UK, he's in London, he works for the council, and of course he's reformed now and has is deeply ensconced in some sort of Anglican religion, or so the fable goes. But that's the story of poor little John Horgan. Have you anything to add, Natalie? Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
No. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just going to ask you guys a question, okay? And I'm going to ask Natalie a question. Do you think he was a member of a satanic cult?
I definitely do, because I think the way he was slowly building up, you know, and gathering all of his bits and his bobs, and like, how did he know to do all this? I'm sure, well, was it in that magazine? What was it? Myth, Man and Magic? Would all of that would all of that information have been in that magazine? Like, imagine he was able to go murder that child, go up to the attic, then come back down, have his tea with his family, go back up, take the child's, he was after getting the scissors and taking the child's clothes off and everything, and going back up and down, then helping in the search. And like, I don't know, I definitely think he had got some kind of mentoring.
Mentoring is the term,
because he was only 16.
He was only 16, and look, guys, we have to remember, this is a time that there was no Temu, okay? There was no eBay, there was no marketplace. If you had to procure something like this, you had to know someone that could put you in touch. And I would imagine, I haven't gone through this magazine, Man, Magic, Myth, but I'd imagine that this magazine was really, you know, more about astrology and stuff like that, and very little about like satanic behaviour, satanic cultish behaviour. And here's my thinking on it, and you know me, I'm the one to hypothesize, and maybe I do it too much, but what we must remember, in the same year, 1973, and we didn't find out about this until years and years and years after, there was the famous, infamous House of Horrors in Dalkey, you know, where children were being peddled to paedophiles and stuff like that. And I'm sure that could have happened. There could have been a connection with Satanism and a satanic cult with that. That's just my thoughts on it. I could be wrong, but it's very bizarre that was going on at the same point in time, isn't it?
Well, you know, the story about you and your friends when you were like, what age? 8?
Yeah, we were.
Was it Halloween?
Yeah, well, we go into that at another time. I'm not going to go into that here.
Now, this is some story.
It's one I don't particularly like revisiting, and some of the people in it are now dead. They couldn't deal with the consequences of it. So maybe someday, if you get me in the right mood, we might revisit this. But,
well, maybe it's a good one for Halloween, because it happened on Halloween night.
We'll see. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, you know, it's a good thing to actually, you know, warn your children.
I would warn everybody, you know, be careful of your kids going out there. But here's the thing, anyhow, we're going to move swiftly on. So guys, there we have it now, really. So it's up to yourselves. Go and check this case out. I would say the authority on this is a gentleman by the name of David Malone. He wrote a book on it. It's called The Boy in the Attic, and it's really worth checking out, because this is horrific. And like I said, I suppose my last few sentences on this is, I thoroughly believe that he was being mentored by somebody. I thoroughly believe he was being facilitated by a number of adults, and there's nothing could change my mind about that. I really do. And you know what, we must also remember, the death certificate of this child was only issued in 2011, so it's the longest inquest in the history of the state as well, because the death certificate only came 38 years after his murder. Very, very sad case. And
there's no like proper documentary or anything ever being done on this. It's like it was really, really brushed under the carpet, wasn't it?
Well, it really was. And you know I said this at the beginning of the video, but you know, when you look through older cases and you try and find facts, and you go, there are no facts, surely facts would have survived through the ages. And then you look at a case that happened only in 1973, and you know, I would say, if it wasn't for the internet, this would be gone. This would be completely gone. If we didn't have internet today, this case would be entirely forgotten about by now. And so it's very easy for a case that's a couple of 100 years old to become questionable and grey, and the facts can become a bit loose if it can happen with a case from 1973.
And also, there's a case from, is it the late 80s that you remember? It happened in Bray.
Bray, yeah. And that's dead in the water completely, where a woman came and murdered her little son in a laneway of a house, only a couple of 100 yards from where I lived. And I remember that, and I've spoken to guards that remember that. However, I think the poor woman committed suicide afterwards. But that case is dead. So it just goes to show things can be brushed under the carpet and things can fall by the wayside. So guys, this time it's not a happy Friday the 13th, it's an unhappy Friday the 13th. Thanks for sticking with us through this case, and if you feel like giving your opinions on this, we'd love to hear them. Take care, guys.